introduce our friend Jeffrey McGuire, manager of community affairs in Akwea, to kind of share his insights and kind of join, basically to join the party. And so,
where's the party?
I don't know. You talked about bringing a bagpipe or some kind of horn set or something, you know. You feel a little bit deprived. Anyway, so, okay. I just connected stuff. And maybe I'll try to fiddle around with that. You start with that and we'll see. Hey.
Oh.
So
this is very lucky for me. So is that working? Yeah. That's a relief because I have a terrible habit of walking around, but I find it incredibly challenging to talk like this. Too many childhood memories, I think. So. This is not about me, but I'll introduce myself very briefly. Most people call me Jam in the community, and my email is just jam@akwaya.com. Most places, this is my user handle, Twitter, etc. And feel free to be in touch if we don't get a chance to talk today. I have a special job at Akwaya. I have the real privilege to work at a company that can afford to have someone called the manager of community affairs. And a great deal of my job is to help Drupal grow. Okay, so I want you to do more business. I want Drupal to be a better, what are we calling it this week? A platform for solving all sorts of problems, realizing people's visions, doing business, and it's something I've been involved with a long time. My first DrupalCon was in 2006 in Brussels. How many people are registered here today to attend? Does anyone know? About 200. 2? Okay, so 250 registered. Okay, so my first DrupalCon was in 2006 in Brussels. I walked in the door, I handed Dries 20 euros, and his wife gave me a t-shirt, and there were 200 of us there. So I've been around for a while. Can someone tell me how long I have now? Until what time? Okay. Bad question, I apologize. So it's also my first time in Israel. I'm really, really, really excited to be here. So thanks for inviting me.
Jeffrey, 45 minutes.
Thank you, okay. All right. So who here is considering adopting Drupal, considering adopting open source for their business? Maybe you're not sure, maybe you want to give it a try and you're here to learn more. Guy in the Ubuntu t-shirt's not sure about open source, okay. Okay, now I guess most of you work with Drupal and open source already? Okay, how many of you need to sell the idea of what we do to other people before you can sell your actual services? You do. It's, anyone can, that can't be secure. What are you talking about, right? We get this every day, right? So I want to help you talk about what we do, think about what we do so that you can explain it to others. There's a slightly different version of this one for the people who need convincing, but you'll just have to play along. And so if we wrap this all up into the smallest possible package, the TLDR version, this is not about free, gratis, no money, okay? And it's kind of important that you don't sell this as free to people. I want to talk about what businesses need, what managers are looking for. This is not everything that business people are looking for, but if you're talking to people who are serious about what they do, these are some great arguments, and I'd love to hear your ideas about what more arguments would be. I want to talk a little bit about how far open source has come in the last 10 years, show you that open source can be the basis for a successful business. Just give a quick overview of the state of Drupal and what we are and where we are as a project, and then talk about the inherent business value in the 4 freedoms that define open source software. And a couple of times today, I might say a word and then ask you to imagine I'm saying another word. So the first time I'm going to ask you to do that is now. And when I talk about business, you might be selling widgets, okay? You might be offering services. You and your potential clients, but this could also be NGOs, this could be charities, this could be people with a vision to change and improve the world. When I say business, please assume that I mean whatever it is that you want to do, realize a vision. It's just an easier term, you know, whether that's education, what have you. So, what do businesses need? What do visionaries need? What does education need? What do businesses need? So, in the classical, you know, if we're really talking about business, big business, when you're making the case for open source, there's a lot of benefits, there's a lot of good, but if we just come in and we say, yeah man, because, you know, it's right, and it's you know, it's the good stuff, that doesn't go over so well. You need to show businesses that open source software has the same kind of ecosystem, the same kind of services and offerings that they're used to buying from IBM and all of the other proprietary businesses for the last several decades. So you really need to make sure that your solution, our solution in this case, Drupal is doing pretty well. You need to make sure that you offer hosting, consultancy, support that IT buyers are used to seeing around proprietary software. Dries Buthaert, who invented Drupal and also founded Akwya, the company I work for, the reason he founded Akwya to begin with was because the Drupal ecosystem until 2008, 9 was incomplete in this sense. There was no commercial SLA-based support offering for Drupal, and that's what Akwya was founded to do. Akwya was initially going to be the Red Hat of Drupal. We were going to freeze and harden a long-term support version of Drupal and then offer support contracts based on this, what was at that time Akwya Drupal. We've changed models several times since then, but one of our core offerings to this day is supporting Drupal. Nowadays we'll support any Drupal 6, 7, or 8 soon, code base, whether it's custom code, any distribution. So you can sell Drupal to any potential client of any size, and you can say there is an international organization with support people around the globe who will answer the telephone, depending how much you want to spend, within 2 hours, within half an hour, whatever you need, and support Drupal no matter what. This completed the Drupal ecosystem, and then it gave rise to a whole new set of potential clients for us. I don't think that the White House would have ever adopted Drupal without that kind of backing, and this whole class of business has become available to us, and the project has grown significantly. And for every big, huge project, there are always many dozens of subcontractors, lots of design, theming, module, coding work. So I do believe that in our particular context, that this idea of a trickle-down economy is working, and I think that so Drupal's growing because we have this complete package to offer, which IT buyers are looking for. There have been a couple other changes recently which make it really interesting to talk about business and open source. The three fundamental values, business values, that I want to talk about today that kind of come in and out of this talk are innovation, cost savings, and risk mitigation. Anyone who's serious about doing something well and staying relevant in the long term today is aware that the only constant anymore is that things are changing all the time. So you really need to stay on top of the latest technologies, the latest trends. You need to know what's going on around the world. And I think anyone who's serious about doing business now is also serious about innovation. With the economic situation in the last few years and right now, the bottom line has become even more important, but I don't think it's ever been cool to waste money, and I don't think it's ever going to come back in fashion again. So cost savings are important to smart business people, as is risk mitigation. Just avoiding doing stupid things that puts everything that you've built at risk. Can open source businesses succeed? So here's another one of the main points I wanted to talk about. Can you really build a successful business on open source technologies? Who thinks so? Now, wind your heads back to 2001. A guy called Jim Alchin at Microsoft said that he couldn't imagine something worse for the software business than open source. How many people are paying their rent with open source software in this room? Okay, so. Now, it was also funny, and then here's another quote. Here's a quote from 2011. It's not very long ago. We don't pick on Microsoft anymore. It's like kicking a pup. In the last couple of months, I was at the Microsoft headquarters in Vienna, and I have a very good friend who's also a Microsoft Most Valuable Professional. That's a very special program they have. This Microsoft Most Valuable Professional is also a Red Hat certified engineer. He's also a very passionate Drupalist with 2 Drupal startups. There's a real generational change going on at Microsoft. A lot of people moving in and moving up in that organization became adults in the last decade and have not lived or worked in a world without open source software, and they can't imagine not working with the kind of models that we're used to. So Microsoft is changing a lot, and we really, really need to keep this in mind as a community. They are open sourcing significant parts of their code bases. .NET, for example, there are now a lot of open source components. They're still figuring out community, they're still working on it, but they've gotten some of the idea. I can also say that when the Azure cloud hosting platform is pretty amazing. They waited a little bit longer and added some features that for example, Amazon and Rackspace don't really do out of the box. So Microsoft is really, really coming. There are a lot of businesses in the world who run completely on Microsoft infrastructure. Microsoft wants Drupal to run on their stuff, and they've gone out of their way to make sure that Drupal will run on Microsoft. They want to stay relevant because they see us succeeding. We have the opportunity now, as a Drupal community, as Drupal business people, to say, you're running on Microsoft, you're running IIS, it is not a problem, it will work, we'll figure it out, that is absolutely no problem. So they've actually opened up a very large market of significant sized companies for us to work with. I think it's great for us. So, can open source business succeed? Who knows this logo? Okay. Who knows this number?
Yearly subscription.
That is the annual price of an Akwea basic network subscription. I'm kidding. It was a terrible joke. It was his. $1.1 billion. February 29, 2012, the Red Hat closed their financial year with $1 billion of revenue. So, you know, that's an open source company, and they're doing okay. Developer-focused organizations, that's us, are achieving unprecedented success. And there's a lot of pressure on traditional proprietary software vendors who've dominated the IT landscape for so long. Please take this as an inspiration. I would love it if it were my company. But I see the chance for lots of us to have a lot more success than anyone would have said 4 or 5 years ago. So keep this in mind. Now, as an open source project, with all this potential for success, is Drupal a good bet? Drupal passes the truck test. Do we know what the truck test is? Basically, in this sense, I mean that there is safety in numbers. You can tell your potential clients that if they're not happy with the service you provide, well, it's open source. There's no secret sauce. There's nothing hidden. They never have to ask for their data back. Okay, so and there are thousands of Drupal service providers in the world. So when a client of yours bets on Drupal, they're betting on a whole ecosystem of us who are all capable of helping them, who are all capable of working with them to realize their visions, to do their business. So this is an incredibly important factor in risk mitigation for business. We have a legitimate ecosystem with multiple hosting providers, multiple site builders, multiple themers, multiple people who know how to do data migration and security. So the truck test is when, you know, God forbid, your lead developer gets run over by a truck, there's somebody else to take his place. The Drupal project is now large enough, I think it has a critical mass that we can say it passes the truck test. Drupal's got a great community. Welcome, thank you for coming.
Hey, where's our Drupal gone?
So,
we didn't even update the size, man.
but this is another. Did you have a camp in 2011?
It's a camp. But we had events. Events are technically.
Okay. So part of my job in the last year has been sponsoring Drupal community events, and I did some very basic data tracking, and more than 10,000, you can't really see this, more than 10,000 people went to Drupal community events around the world. And I'm personally incredibly excited to be able to tell you there have now been Drupal events in Indonesia, in New Zealand, which didn't quite make it onto the map. Been a couple in Africa this year. Drupal Pichu is coming in January, the sort of DrupalCon Sao Paulo replacement. I think it's really, really exciting. So Drupal is spreading beyond North America and Europe, and is really, really doing well. And there's an awful lot of people doing it, and it's a great bunch of people to be involved in. I borrowed a slide from Dries. This is how he talks about Drupal today. Roughly 2% of the web is running Drupal. Depending on how you count it, there are many, many thousands of developers. I think that there are more than 20,000 sandbox projects now on Drupal.org. More than 15,000 modules. It's downloaded 1 million times. Downloaded more than 4 million times a year. Drupal.org has 1.5 million unique visitors a month. It's got about 55 full translations of the core. I think there are maybe 100 and... Does anybody remember on the translation server there's 108 or 121 translations registered, but they're not all complete. This, don't talk about that with your friends. If any of you have to give presentations, this is a really good style of room, but can you tell me what's wrong with this slide? This is, see, it's Dries' so I can be critical. Mostly you're in sort of smaller, flat rooms. Not everybody can see over the heads of the people in front of them. Don't put any text down here. Put all your text in the top 2/3 of your slide when you're preparing your presentation. I am not used to air conditioning. This is terrible. So, a couple of years ago, this guy called Henrik Ingo, who's pretty big in Linux Lab, wrote a really, really super, super interesting article about It was basically called How to Grow Your Open Source Project 10 Times and Revenues 5 Times. And the article itself was actually about different open source projects with different governance models, and how if you run a project with a non-profit foundation, it is going to be 10 times bigger than a project run by a private company or any other governance model. And that was in itself very interesting. He did a lot of measuring, and there's a lot of statistics behind this article. The actual point that I find great for us is that, well, how many CMSs are in this top 5 or 7 list, right? There's only one. There's only one project of our kind that makes this list, and he puts us at the level of Linux or Mozilla in terms of activity and size. So really, you can point to Drupal as a very, very successful project to your potential clients. One thing that I've been really excited about for a couple years, this is Jim Whitehurst. He's the CEO of Red Hat, the people with the big number. He said last year, he said something, and when I heard him say this, every time he said Linux, I thought to myself, Drupal's there. Okay, so here's the next, for this quote, when I say Linux, think Drupal, okay? So, Linux is a transformational technology. The technology of Linux empowers advancements and innovations that have nothing to do with the technology of Linux. That is to say, Linux supports the development of new business models as well as new technologies. I think that's where we are with Drupal. I think that you can use Drupal to realize your vision, to make the world a better place, to do more business. You can really make Drupal, you can use Drupal to build the tools that you need, exactly the tools that you need. So Drupal is this amazing tool-making tool. And it's at the point where it's universal enough to be transformational. I find that word interesting. Master of, my water is called Master of Everything. I should put that on my next slide. Drupal, Master of Everything. So, when we're talking about the reach, the success, is Drupal a safe bet for your local city council? Is Drupal a safe bet for your local cooperative? Whatever it is. Well, here are a few examples. Al Jazeera, the world's largest news organization, The Economist, the Grammy Awards. So right here you can say that Drupal is massively scalable. The Grammy site, once or twice a year, gets unbelievably massive traffic, and then it's kind of quiet. Drupal is very, very popular in government. City of London, whitehouse.gov, NASA, US Department of Energy. Also 13% of public administration websites in Italy. The government of Vietnam. Almost every Belgian website. It's an incredibly, I believe that Israel is working on a big Drupal project right now. Some people in this room know about it. Yep. So it's a great place for education too. Stanford University. I met this guy called Zach Chandler, and they have a little company inside the university that's called Stanford Web Services, I think. So Stanford Web Services is actually a Drupal shop. And if anyone involved in anything at Stanford University says, hey, I need a website, Stanford Web Services says, fill out this online form, and they put in a name, and they put in a couple details, and they have an auto-provisioning platform that gives them a Drupal site. Ready to go, pre-themed with the standard university theme elements, ready. So Stanford, piece by piece by piece, is going all Drupal. MIT, Oxford. One of my favorite sites online, Red Hat, runs this thing called opensource.com. That's a Drupal site. Ubuntu site runs on Drupal. Twitter developers runs on Drupal. X.com, which is the eBay developers platform, that runs on Drupal. And who's heard of, okay, this is crazy. Who's heard of forge.mil? Did you know that there is a Drupal website which is, it's everything we do well. It's a community site for developers of open source software for the United States military? Who knew these things existed? But there's an open source developers community for military applications, but it runs on Drupal. Amnesty International, Drupal has really, really deep roots in activism, so a lot of charities, a lot of NGOs, a lot of international organizations doing good run Drupal. But, you know, it's not just hippie tech, right? The New York Stock Exchange only runs Drupal now. A guy called Bob Kerner, who's their chief technology officer, and he's a really hardcore Drupal guy. And they threw out millions of dollars of all sorts of Java development and went all Drupal and started launching multiple sites a month because they can do it with Drupal. So Drupal's a safe bet. For DrupalCon Denver, at work I made an infographic with a great guy called Yo-Yo Todt, and Mock Design is his company. It gives some statistics as of well, March now. My boss suggested I try QR codes so that everybody can get a hold of these things. Made this nice infographic. It's some really, really nice statistics about the project with some of these examples that I've been talking about today. If you want to see where Drupal's going, this is just geeky stuff. Larry Garfield was in San Francisco just a couple weeks ago and did a talk about how the Symfony 2 components are being integrated into Drupal, and this is really exciting stuff. So for the deeply geeky, this is amazing stuff. I was just up at the PHP Con in Poland talking about it, and you know, the broader PHP community is starting to take us seriously again as a project because we're integrating a, you know, more grown-up framework into our architecture. So, getting to my point, who knows these 4 freedoms? The definition of open source software is you're free to use it, study it, modify it, and share it. I'm paraphrasing a little bit. Does anybody need to have the conversation about free software versus open source software? Does anybody feel uncomfortable if I pretty much treat them as the same thing for the duration of this talk? Richard Stallman's not here. You're not comfortable with that? Okay. So, free software considers itself the solution to a set of problems, especially social problems. And I believe that's deeply true and necessary and right. Richard Stallman says, because he doesn't like open source as a term, he talks down and says, oh, it's a practical approach, and the open source people, they're also open to using things that aren't free. I acknowledge that. I believe that with an open source project like Drupal, running the GPL, that we can do social good and get a lot of practical benefit out of it. So that's the premise for what I'm talking about today. And if that's all right, for the next 30 minutes then.
There's just one problem.
Yeah.
You only have 15.
Oh, okay. But if you think I'm full of it with this, please let's talk about it afterwards, because, all right. So I'm talking about open source software. I think that what it comes down to for me is that this kind of software lets you control your own destiny. You can make of open source software what you will. You're the driver, you determine the innovation. You drive the change, you can do what you need with it, and when your needs change and grow, it can change with you. A guy called Jeff Eaton, he works for Lullabot. He's one of my very, 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 very favorite Drupalists. I really admire him. He says the 4 freedoms, they're your escape hatch out of any problem. I say the 4 freedoms are your license to make a difference. So, the values that open source software offers, let's, remember, we're pitching to clients here. Well, you can use it, okay? You are free to use it for anything and anywhere and forever, and it's sort of free, okay? Free works, free's good sometimes. You know, in the age of the internet, free is succeeding on some kind of minor level. But you can't say, hey, it's free, because you're going to set really bad expectations with your clients. You know, nobody should be wasting money, but it's not free. When you say it's free, okay, there's this psychological power in free. Dan Ariely wrote a book called Predictably Irrational. Has anybody heard of Dan Ariely? Yeah, all right. He wrote another book called The Upside of Irrationality, which is also fascinating. He talks in Predictably Irrational, he talks about the power of free. He talks about, you know, how many of us will go and buy, you know, 2 of something we don't need because the 3rd one's free, right? It's way, way too powerful. You must not talk about free software as in a zero amount of money. It happens to have a 0 price tag to download and use, but the point is you're free to use it for anything, okay? So instead of talking about free, you need to think about how proprietary software works and how open source software works. And any IT project is going to have costs associated with it. You know, all the hardware, all the stuff, the qualified people to set it up, bandwidth, design, but there's no licensing fee. Well, when I'm not throwing $100,000 a year into somebody else's pocket to build my business, right? I can invest in my team. I can train new Drupalists. Or, you know, I can hire a Drupal shop to develop me a new functionality, and then I can let them go on and do another job. So I can invest exactly what I need when I need it, and not just sort of throw money at something once a year, once a month, however you do it. When I talk about vendor lock-in, there are some products still that have, you know, a regional vendor program. A regional, you know, there's an Israel representative and there's a Denmark representative, and you know, maybe they have 3 shops that they work with who have the license to do whatever it is. Drupal has thousands of vendors, and there's nothing stopping you as a client from going to someone else. We, as open source service providers, by definition, must provide the highest levels of service, the best quality at all times, because our clients are free to leave us anytime they want. I think that's actually a great argument to get more clients, because really we have to do a good job all the time. Your client owns your data. Oh, a vendor roadmap. You know, the next Twitter gets invented. App.net suddenly becomes incredibly popular, all right? When are they going to introduce that into whatever proprietary CMS? Well, there's going to be some meetings, and then they'll send, you know, they might do a study, and then the vice presidents will talk about it, and then they'll see where it fits on their roadmap, and then they'll send it in and get it into the planning phase and implementation. You might have it. Never. Next year, whenever it comes, or you might not, because they're building solutions for the 80%. They want to do the minimum effort to touch the maximum number of people. What your need is might be too edgy, too freaky, too weird, and it, you know, not 80% of people need it. So, you know, actually, you might not get the functionality you need. Well, we're going to talk about it a little bit more in a moment, but with open source software, with Drupal, you can make that happen. And you can make it happen when you need it, and because of the speed of innovation in Drupal that I'll also mention in a moment, you can pretty much stay on the cutting edge if that's where you want to be. Instead of talking about free as in free, right, as in 2 for 1, Jeff Robbins, another guy from Lullaby, talks about open source being free as in puppies. You know, you get it, but then you really have to take care of it. You trade costs for responsibility in that case. But as I was saying before, all of a sudden you're in control of your destiny. So my point is, Do you want your business, or do you want your government services to be built on something that it has no control over? Okay? Do you want to build your business on something that you have to pay for over and over again, that someone else can arbitrarily turn off or charge more for? I don't think so. In the United States, in the restaurant business, they say you've got to own the bricks. You got to own the bricks means you rent some place, you put in a fantastic, whatever kind of food you cook, and it's really successful. And the next year, the landlord comes back with a new contract that says, you guys are doing great, I think you can afford twice the rent. Okay? And then you're screwed. You gotta own the bricks. You can download Drupal and use it for whatever you want from now until infinity. You know? You don't even have to upgrade it if you really don't. It will be stupid. But it's yours. There's a guy running Drupal 3.2 site online still. It looks funky, but it still works. It does exactly what he wants. Okay? So open source is an insurance against the whims of profit, of shareholder value. You know, a friend of mine from Oracle said that open source is a self-healing network, which I thought was a really nice concept. But if someone like Oracle has collaboration software that's not making them money, they're going to kill it. They're going to end of life it. They might do it nicely. They might offer you their other product which costs, you know, very slightly twice as much in a year, and let you migrate your data, but they're going to kill it. Nobody owns Drupal. Nobody's going to stop you using it, right? So you're free to use it for anything and forever. That's a lot of business value there. The second freedom is you're free to study it. I think this means you're allowed to understand what you're using. Jeff Eaton, same guy, says the bad dies or the bad gets fixed. Quality and security are common outcomes of transparency. So open source is not automatically faster or more secure or higher quality. It is potentially so. A project like Drupal with a real critical mass of really smart people working on it probably is superior in many ways to many other things, but it's not. But open source software is automatically transparent. You can see what you're getting and you can make smarter, better informed decisions about it. Government agencies around the world, huge companies, they're all using Drupal. They think it's safe enough. That's good enough for me. If it's not good enough for you, you can look at every single line of code. You can get someone to trust to look at it. You can understand exactly what you're buying into, okay? So that's you have the ability to make informed decisions. You're mitigating a lot of risk that way of our freedoms. So is it secure? Phase 2, thank you for this slide. This is very United States centric, but these government agencies in the United States think it's secure. If people ask you how open source can be open and secure at the same time, people who are used to thinking in terms of secrets, I did a project with Greg Knaddison, the security lead, and Mug Design again, to make an infographic and a detailed blog post that the Drupal security team helped me with, explaining exactly how Drupal can be open and secure at the same time. I think this is a great pitch tool. I would really love to hear about it if you use it. Make a poster, whatever you want. It's Creative Commons licensed. 5, I'm changing slides. 4, 3, guy with the blue case. This was the most popular blog post on opensource.com for a few weeks. This year I was very, very proud of that. And it's very cute. The Mug Design does a fantastic job. So, the next freedom. You know, we were saying before, you're in control of your destiny. Open source allows you to build whatever you need when you need it. If a proprietary solution is buggy, it might never be fixed. And if it only does 80% of what you need, when do you get the other 20%? Your priorities might not match the proprietary software vendor's roadmap. You are allowed to change it. You're allowed to make it the tool that you need. So, this is an amazing book from quite a few years ago that really predicted a lot of what's going on now with open source software. The full quote is a little bit longer. It talks about the distribution of innovation in open source being widely distributed rather than among a few individual actors. The point of this is that in the old manufacturing model, manufacturers make something and broadcast it to users, and users accept it and use it. So in open source software, we're both. You're using it, and you're making it better, and you're giving that back so it's better, and then you're using it, and you're modifying it to be exactly what you need. So we are users and manufacturers in open source software, and this drives innovation. This lets us stay, this lets us use the newest APIs. This lets us take advantage of the newest technologies. Drupal began as community software. It was a bulletin board in Dries' dorm in Antwerp. And now it does e-commerce and runs government websites and media and medical sites and runs hotels. I mean, it's incredible. So the fact that you can modify it to be any tool you need to stay on top of innovation is an incredible amount of value. That value wouldn't be nearly as great if you weren't allowed to then share it, sell it, redistribute it, give it back, okay? You're free to reuse the best solutions that are out there, because the practice in open source software, you shouldn't really have to do something twice. You should really, my fixed bugs are your fixed bugs. We shouldn't be doing anything twice. We should be focusing all of our energies on something new and different every single time, improving it every single time. So if you start with the 80% solution in Drupal, you get a distribution, you configuration, whatever, and you build the other 20%, and then you have a perfect system to run a government department, for example. Well, you can package that up and you can give it to all the other departments or other countries. This is something else I want to touch on in a moment. You can pass that on to anyone with the same interests, and they benefit. And they're probably, in my case, if I give something back, almost everyone out there is smarter than me, and it's going to come back to me better. Check this out. Tell your clients who have to pay for a new module, say, listen, you have to pay for this development once, okay? But then we're going to open source it. We're going to put it back in the Drupal community. This is a feature that other people are going to want. They're going to download it, and they're going to say, hey, but we can optimize it, and we're going to add this other function here, and then they're going to give it back. And every upgrade and every update, once your client has bought a new feature once, is free forever. You buy it once, it comes back better. The more you give, the more you get. That's a huge amount of value for your client. 7 minutes. Awesome. Who knows this guy? Long hair guy. If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. Isaac Newton.
Jim Morrison.
So, this concept of standing on the shoulders of giants is what I'm saying. Don't code it twice. Go find the best solution that there is for your problem and then make that better. So you get, as a business person, you get a lot of speed, you get a lot of velocity. You download Drupal and you turn it on, that's millions of hours of coding done for you. You're standing in front of millions of hours and billions of dollars of value. You know, Swiss developers get 200 francs an hour or more, right? If it were all developed in Switzerland, it would be a lot more value. But still, think about the time. Think about, Chicks, Earl Miles, Angie, Dries, Robert Douglas, all this smart, Larry Garfield, I mean, it's all David, it's all individually, personally spent thousands and thousands and thousands of hours on this thing. You could never hire them. They don't have time, they're too expensive. They work for you every single day, every single time you install Drupal. It's incredible. Somebody else fixes a bug, it's fixed for you too. So you can build something once and use it over and over again. I think this next slide has pretty much ended up in the wrong place, but this is how Dries talks about the innovation picture. And it's a slightly different way to put the argument together, but he still ends up with the idea that it's a very innovative space that we're in. Who's heard of Lawrence Lessig? until a couple of years ago, he was very, very involved with copyright issues. He invented Creative Commons licensing. He's gotten out of that, and he's very concerned now about the corrupting effect of money on politics. And he's not talking about this kind of corruption. He's talking about the fact that there's too much money in a system like the United States political system. He's got some ideas about how to fix it, about how to get the money out. I think it's a pipe dream. I don't think it's going to happen because, you know, there are too many people profiting from it the way they are. But the book he wrote, The Outsider's Guide to Fixing the Republic, is really, really interesting. It's a very quick read. The introduction is what captivated me the most. He talked about preparing the book. And so there are 2 points about this, I think. At least 2 points about this. In the world of computer software, open source communities develop and improve ideas organically based on concepts and practices that work. Driven by innovation, contributed by individuals, open source simply means that a system is available to any who wish to contribute. It provides the fastest possible rate for the improvement of ideas. So, when he was interviewing people setting up this book, he talked with people from the Occupy Wall Street movement, he talked with people from the Tea Party movement. Okay, that's as far apart as you can get in the United States politics right now, probably. Both of them said, oh, we're open source political movements. People have heard about what we're doing here. Drupal is you know, depending on how you slice it, the biggest and most successful software, open source software project on the planet. We have different ways of doing things. We share stuff. We talk about stuff. We're transparent. We get very upset. We get very passionate, but we resolve stuff. These models of governance are very, very valuable, and people are noticing, okay? But it's not just how we do stuff, it's the actual product of what we're doing. Speaking of changing the world, you know, oh, well, there was some, you were talking about cooperation and not competition, right? So there's this horrible Silicon Valley word, co-opetition. Apple buys a lot of chips and stuff from Samsung to make the iPhone, and then it sues Samsung for violating. I don't get it. But somehow they're competing and cooperating at the same time. But how about this? You know, Sony Music and Warner Brothers Records needed websites, and one of them got there first, I forget who it was, and decided that Drupal was what they were going to use. Eventually the other also came to Drupal. Well, one of them needed, you know, 5-star ratings, like kind of like horrible, you know, whatever, 5-star rating. One of the record companies invented it, the Drupal module, put it in the repository. The other record company found Drupal. They took that, improved it, made it, I think, skinnable and customizable, and then, you know, so these record companies need a rating tool for their websites, and they built it together, so they only have to invest once. They don't have to compete in building basic business infrastructure. They can compete on content, quality, messaging, whatever they want to do out in the business space, but they're cooperating down here with open source software. And our models let people do that. Maybe even, oh, I'm 10 seconds over now. This is just about my last point. What's maybe even more exciting, did you know that the White House now has a GitHub repository for its Drupal stuff? The White House made a petitioning tool. Basically, as I understand it, anyone in the United States is allowed to submit a petition, and if it collects enough, you know, clicky digital signatures, the government has said that it will look into it, that it will take it seriously, that it will, you know, consider it as a matter of policy. And this tool, well, they've open sourced that, okay? They've given it back. So when governments wanted to make a difference in the world in the past, and today, they could bomb a place, they could build a bridge, they could send a vaccine, okay? You build a bridge and it lets people move and therefore society happens and that's all great. But you spend $1 million and you have a thing, okay? What if you spend $1 million on open source software development as a government for an infrastructure project that lets, you know, the citizen participation improving people's lives, whatever it is, built on open source software. Well, if I build it once, how many times can I use it? N times. So now governments can invest in world-changing infrastructure that anyone else that can use. Any other government can take it. So I think this has an incredible amount of potential for the future. I'm very excited to be involved in this. So these 4 freedoms imply a lot of real business value, a lot of possibility to change the world, a lot of possibility to simply do better business. Innovate, save costs, mitigate risk. You understand what you're getting. That's less risky. You own what you're using. That's less risky. You're not paying a license fee. That saves you money. It changes your chain. It changes your chain of investment. It is not free. You can reuse stuff. That's faster. You inherit millions of hours of coding every time you turn it on. You can be the manufacturer and the user, so you can innovate. And you can invest in your own team and your own vision and what you need to do. I really, really think that defines business value that anyone can understand with a head on their shoulders. A bunch of conversations with a bunch of people inspired this talk. Thank you on camera to all of you. Thank you for coming. Anything else you want to talk about, I'm here all day. I would love to meet you, get your cards, correspond in the future. And thanks again.